Welcome back to our series on Chinese folk religion. Last episode, we went over the general ideas and history of Buddhism, Taoism and Confucianism. Today, we'll be exploring how they interacted with each other in Chinese history and how they impacted Chinese society.
Wait, I thought you said Buddhism was from the Indian subcontinent.
You're right, let's start off with that. Most people agree that Buddhism came to China through monks that were traveling along the Silk Road around the year 0 to 200 CE. In the beginning, Indian monks faced cultural and linguistic barriers and struggled to explain Buddhism to people in China. They then realized Taoism and Buddhism actually had similarities, for instance, Dharma or the cosmic law and order in Buddhism, which is comparable with the concept of Tao in Taoism. The practice of meditation. Both religions use it to attain wisdom and a steady peace of mind. So, Buddhists borrowed terminology and phrasing from Taoism to explain their own religion to Chinese people. And it worked. Buddhism began to take root in Chinese society. But it wasn't just a one-way street. Taoism also took inspiration from Buddhism.
So one thing that Buddhism brought to China was the idea of monasteries. So, Buddhism was, propagated by Buddhist monks who built monasteries. Although there were Taoist hermits, Taoist writers, Taoist, religious people, we don't think that they lived in anything like a kind of organized system like a monastery before Buddhism came to China. So Buddhism brought this idea of monasteries.
And throughout history, Buddhism and Taoism have kind of acted like two big firms in constant competition with one another, insisting we are not the same, but at the same time imitating each other.
At a certain period of time, there is also competition between the Taoists and Buddhists because they occupy similar space within Chinese religious life.
In the meantime, Confucianism wasn't too bothered by them.
Confucianism kind of occupies somewhat different space. Confucianism is more with ethical principles, with public morality, with issues of political philosophy and governance and so on.
As ancient China shifted through different dynasties, society relied on two sources of peace and strength to function properly. The first one can be seen as the foundation of Chinese society. Confucianism helped to provide its social and political structure. Confucianism has had an influence on Chinese politics for a long time. It was institutionalized in the Tang Dynasty and was the world's longest-lasting meritocratic system. The imperial civil service exam was in place for 1300 years, up until the very last moment of the Qing Dynasty in 1905. If a male citizen wanted a job in the government, he needed to study Confucianist books back to front to pass this exam. This kicked off the heavy exam culture we have nowadays in East Asia and even around the world. Confucianism also influenced cultural traditions. The notion of family was the most important part of Confucianism, especially the respect of elders and ancestors. People applied this on their day-to-day, but also on a spiritual level. They began to set up altars in their houses to worship their ancestors. Even today, it's common for families to have an altar in their living room so they can light incense to pay respect to their family and the gods. It's like a daily reminder to do your best to honor the life of your ancestors. A society with physical order isn't enough. Individuals also need inner peace and spiritual peace. That's where Buddhism and Taoism comes in. Buddhism offers people a way to escape from the suffering of life, and Taoism provides the way to harmony. Both beliefs had their ups and downs in popularity. Emperors in different dynasties would prefer one belief over another, but most emperors tended to prefer Taoism over Buddhism. Why? Buddhist monks were more proactive in spreading Buddhist stories into the popular culture. On the other hand, Taoism was more of an inward philosophy, providing guidance for people who want it. The rise of Buddhism was perceived as a threat to the government for several reasons. After converting to Buddhism, many people left their jobs to become monks, and government lost their taxable income as a result. More than just leaving their jobs, people also left their families to become monks. For a Confucian-centered government, it undermined the Chinese way of life. Adding the fact that Buddhism isn't from China, it was quickly labeled as a dangerous foreign influence. From the 5th to the 10th century, Buddhism would undergo several persecutions led by emperors. But most of the time, people still had the freedom to practice whatever they wanted. China is a big territory. it's always been hard to totally control everything. The state of religious freedom actually improved under the Mongolian Yuan dynasty. Yes, Mongolians were bloody conquerors, but once people surrendered to their reign, they turned out to be pretty liberal regarding each other's belief, or where I'm from, we actually say laissez-faire. Each belief was treated equally. Even foreign ones like Islam or Christianity were welcome to the Yuan kingdom. After Yuan dynasty, tolerance towards Taoism and Buddhism mostly stuck around for the Ming and the Qing dynasties. We can see the effects on these beliefs in Chinese art. The most obvious example might be the Taoist symbolism in the Chinese landscape painting style called Shan Shuei. It is an artistic trend where painters idealize nature and express their feelings by reproducing landscape in an abstract way. In these paintings, the vastness of the mountain and the tininess of the human are familiar images in Taoism. Light and heavy brushstrokes represent the yin and the yang. Organically, as beliefs fell and rose in popularity during certain periods, each left their marks on the society. By this process, Buddhist, Taoist and Confucianist traditions merged together and became the foundation of Chinese folk religion. It's a little like how Instagram, WhatsApp and Facebook all started out as a social network for different purposes, but over time all came together to form Meta. In Mandarin, we say 三条合一, which means three teachings that became one. The religious merging of Buddhism and Taoism also has to do with their deities. They are both polytheistic beliefs and would add deities from the opposite side to their practice as a way of saying, this god that you are worshipping actually originated from our dogma. Their goal was to be seen as the more legitimate belief. This led to Buddhist and Taoist temple having a lot of gods in common nowadays. In addition to that, each region of China has its own culture with its own local deities. Confucianism values of respect for the scholars and elders have also caused historical figures to be worshipped locally. Those local deities were gradually adopted by Taoism and Buddhism. For instance, Guanggong, a famous Chinese general from the 2nd century, was known for his loyalty and superhuman feats. He has been adopted by both religions and his statue can be seen in nearly every temple. Badass. As you can imagine, the phenomenon of sharing deities also contributes to society seeing Buddhism and Taoism as one. It's important to keep in mind that there were and still are people in Chinese society that strictly follow only one belief. But for the majority, Buddhism, Taoism and Confucianism all became part of the culture and are incorporated into the practice of folk religions, where there are few strict or defining rules. And that is how the three teachings evolved in China.
Remy, we're in Taiwan, not China, okay?
Oh yeah, you're right. How did you even notice that? So, why am I here in Taiwan talking about this? Find the answer in the next episode.